The sequence of episodes paints a portrait of Archie Bunker's world, a stubborn working-class man from Queens, navigating an America that feels to him increasingly unrecognizable. Each story captures the tension between his nostalgia for the good old days and the social transformations of the 1,970 seconds that challenge his beliefs, humor, and identity. The first segment opens inside Ferguson's grocery store, a small battlefield of inflation and generational complaint. Archie and his wife Edith wander the aisles, arguing about prices that have doubled since his youth. Bread now costs 50 cents instead of 11 beans. Climb from 49 to 53 cents, and Archie rages that the country is in trouble every time there's an outbreak of peace. The dialogue, comic yet poignant, embodies his worldview. War once kept America prosperous, while peacetime exposes economic decay. He squeezes loaves of bread to test freshness lectures, his wife about dented cans and mutters about unemployment, all while revealing a deeper anxiety, his own joblessness and fear of aging irrelevance. That anxiety explodes in the following storyline when Archie applies for a janitor position under a female supervisor, Miss Maloney. The interview humiliates him. He learns that his competitor, a 50-year-old man named Frank Edwards, is dismissed as overqualified, while Archie is valued precisely for his lack of skill. The bitter irony of being rewarded for ignorance hits him just as he realizes that for many older workers, the American dream has shrunk to survival wages. When Frank, defeated, climbs out onto a ledge intending to end his life, Archie becomes an accidental hero, trying to talk him down with clumsy compassion, gallows humor, and his own confession of impotence and despair. The scene unfolds on the edge of tragedy and absurdity, two men suspended between pride and collapse, arguing about grandson's God and who deserves to live. Ultimately, Archie's desperate empathy saves Frank, but it also confronts him with his own mortality. That night, lying in bed with Edith, he feels briefly redeemed as Pudence, as he calls it, returning until the pain in his gallbladder interrupts both his triumph and his illusions of control. The hospital episodes that follow continue this meditation on fragility. Archie faces surgery under the care of Dr. Shapiro, his Jewish physician, and a West Indian nurse whose humor and authority unsettle his bigotry. The dialogue exposes the tension between Archie's instinctive prejudice and his helpless dependence on the very people he once mocked. As the nurse prepares to shave him for surgery, he protests that men are used to shaving and fears a slip of the razor will change his whole personality. The nurse calmly replies she will close her eyes while shaving, flipping his sexism into absurdity. Beneath the laughter lies the quiet humiliation of a man stripped of all defenses, literally naked, facing mortality and learning to trust strangers. The operation delays when the hospital cannot locate his rare blood type, AB negative. Archie panics at the thought of receiving blood from Dr. Thatcher, a black female doctor volunteering as donor. His crude wordplay about white hemoglobin and colored shemoglobin reveals his racism even as he lies powerless on the stretcher. The doctor's professionalism and humor deflate his fear, and the script exposes the painful comedy of social progress, an ignorant man rescued by those he least respects. The audience laughs, but uneasily the scene mirrors a society forced toward integration, not by enlightenment, but by necessity. A later episode shifts tone into farce and friendship. Archie's co-worker, Pinky Peterson, known for cruel practical jokes, sets a trap involving a fake mongoose box that scares Archie into believing he's been bitten. Enraged, Archie vows revenge and sees his chance when Beverly LaSalle, a glamorous female impersonator whose life he once saved, is back in town. Archie invites Beverly to dinner with Pinky, pretending she is a real woman, intending to humiliate his old friend. The dinner begins as comedy of manners and ends in chaos. Pinky, believing Beverly is a beautiful lady, falls sincerely for her charm. When the truth is revealed, mid-meal confusion and heartbreak ensue. Beverly, embarrassed, exposes her identity. Pinky's girlfriend storms in, and Archie, proud of his prank, fails to see the cruelty he's unleashed. Yet beneath the slapstick lies a subtle inversion. Beverly emerges as the only dignified character, gracious and human, while Archie's victory feels hollow, leaving him celebrated for cruelty rather than courage. The narrative then pivots to Edith, long the gentle heart of the family, suddenly placed at the center of public attention. At the Sunshine Home, a retirement center where she volunteers a guest, suffers a heart attack during a birthday celebration. Without hesitation, Edith performs CPR and saves his life. Her instinctive compassion contrasts sharply with Archie's bluster. She acts, he talks. News of her heroism spreads quickly, and a television reporter, Kate Corman, a confident professional woman, arrives to feature Edith as Citizen of the Week. The resulting household chaos captures the gender and media dynamics of the era. Archie fumbles with pride and jealousy, complaining that women ain't got the voice for news and insisting disasters should be reported by men with ghost voices. While Edith rehearses her interview, he hovers in the background, desperate to insert himself into her moment of recognition. His insecurity comic, yet heartbreaking, reflects the fading authority of men like him in a changing society. During the live broadcast, Edith's sincerity disarms everyone. She speaks simply about saving a man's life unaware of cameras or fame. The production crew's mechanical professionalism contrasts with her human warmth. Archie interrupts repeatedly, offering irrelevant details about his war service until the reporter politely silences him. In the closing moments, the audience sees Edith's quiet dignity triumph over his noise, the ordinary goodness of a woman uncorrupted by pride or ideology, whose instinct for kindness restores faith in humanity where rhetoric fails. Together, these episodes chart a descent and rebirth. Archie's gallstones, his unemployment, his prejudice, and his schemes all point to a deeper illness, the fear of a world moving beyond him. Yet amid the comedy, the scripts reveal an unexpected tenderness. His love for his wife, his guilt toward fellow workers, his struggle between ignorance and decency. Each episode functions as a mirror of 1,970 seconds, America, where inflation, feminism, racial integration, and moral confusion clash in working-class kitchens and hospital rooms rather than in grand political arenas. The rhythm of life in the Bunker household continues like an old song played on a scratched vinyl record, familiar, funny, and tinged with melancholy. Archie, still recovering from surgery, moves through each day with the stubborn dignity of a man who refuses to admit fragility. The once fearsome patriarch now finds himself surrounded by women nurses, doctors, his wife, his daughter Gloria, who care for him, tease him, and gently undermine his old authority. In this inversion of power, humor becomes both shield and mirror. The more he jokes, the more the audience senses the quiet terror underneath the terror of becoming useless, of watching the world slip out of his grasp. After the hospital ordeal, home becomes a stage for denial. Archie sits in his worn chair as if it were a throne, railing against modern prices, modern women, and modern politics. He reminisces about 1942, the year of cheap bread and a beautiful war. To him, that war symbolizes the last time America was united. Men were men, and the hierarchy of life was unquestioned. Yet the series constantly exposes the absurdity of this nostalgia. His yearning for the past blinds him to the humanity right in front of him, the generosity of Edith, the moral courage of people like Beverly, the everyday decency of those he mocks. The humor in these episodes often feels like a time bomb hidden beneath laughter. When Archie mocks feminism or racial equality, the audience laughs not because they agree, but because they recognize the futility of his resistance. The writers use him as both a caricature and a vessel of truth. Through his ignorance, they expose the confusion of an entire generation. His bigotry, though crude, becomes strangely tragic, the desperate protest of a man who fears invisibility. By the time he argues with the West Indian nurse about shaving or worries about a woman's blood entering his veins, the audience no longer sees a villain, but a frightened relic, clinging to whatever fragments of control remain. And yet Archie is never allowed to become purely pitiful. His humor rescues him. Even at his most stubborn, he reveals flashes of intelligence wrapped in bluster. When he tells Edith that the country is doomed every time there's an outbreak of peace, it's satire and prophecy at once. He recognizes the hypocrisy of prosperity built on conflict, even if he can't articulate it intellectually. This duality, ignorance and instinct, cruelty and kindness, is what makes the character immortal. Edith's growing independence in these episodes stands as the countermelody to Archie's decline. For years, she existed as the quiet echo to his voice, the obedient wife who apologized for his outbursts. But here, she becomes the moral compass of the story. When she saves a man's life using CPR, she demonstrates a competence rooted not in education or power, but in compassion and instinct. The irony is sharp. While Archie prides himself on being the head of the house, it is Edith, gentle, uncertain Edith, who embodies real heroism. Her reward is not just public recognition, but self-discovery. The television crew that arrives to film her turns their living room into a surreal battlefield of gender politics and media spectacle. Archie tries to hijack the attention, bragging about his war medals and interrupting the interview with irrelevant jokes, but Edith remains authentic. Her humility becomes her strength, her awkwardness, her grace. She stumbles through the lights and microphones, genuinely puzzled by the fuss, until her simplicity pierces through the artificiality of television. The satire here is exquisite. Through the chaos of the broadcast, cameras crashing into furniture reporters, condescendingly choreographing Edith's lines, Archie shouting from the background, the show mocks the commercialization of morality. A simple act of goodness becomes entertainment stripped of privacy and sincerity. Yet even within that farce, Edith's decency triumphs. She doesn't understand the performance, and precisely because she doesn't, she remains uncorrupted by it. When the camera finally captures her smiling nervously, she becomes the soul of the series, the quiet reminder that decency survives even when the world turns it into a headline. The episode involving Beverly LaSalle serves as the emotional core of the later stretch. Beneath the outrageous humor lies a lesson in empathy. Beverly, a female impersonator, occupies a liminal space that confuses and fascinates the characters. To Archie, she is both a source of discomfort and an opportunity for revenge. To Edith, she is simply another human being. The dinner prank Archie designs pretending Beverly is a woman to fool, Pinky reveals his inability to see beyond appearances. But Beverly's calm dignity throughout the ordeal turns the trap back on him. The laughter that follows the revelation that she is a man is uneasy, forcing the audience to confront its own prejudice. Beverly does not lash out. Instead, she forgives the humiliation with quiet strength. The final image of her sitting amid the chaos, half in makeup, half exposed, yet utterly composed, becomes a metaphor for courage in a world addicted to ridicule. Through all these vignettes, All in the Family uses comedy as anthropology. The grocery store scene exposes class anxiety. The job interview dramatizes the cruelty of an economy that discards the middle-aged. The hospital arc turns racial and gender conflict into absurdist theater. And the Beverly LaSalle plot transforms mockery into revelation. Every laugh carries a sting, every insult a reflection of deeper fear. Archie's household becomes a miniature America, clumsy, contradictory, hopeful in spite of itself. What makes these episodes enduring is their refusal to moralize. The scripts never punish Archie with divine justice or reward Edith with fairy tale triumph. Instead, they let life continue, messy, unresolved, achingly real. One night, Archie is a hero saving a suicidal man. The next morning, he is a patient whining about gallstones. One moment, he rails against women on television. The next, he cannot live without his wife's steady hand. The show insists that growth comes not from revelation, but repetition, the slow, painful erosion of ignorance by experience. In the quieter exchanges between Archie and Edith, something almost poetic emerges. When he asks her before surgery to dress him in his gray suit with the blue tie, or when he gives her instructions about his funeral, his bluster hides tenderness. He worries about his grandson, remembering him, about being forgotten, about what songs will play after he's gone. Edith listens with tears in her eyes, trying to stop him from speaking of death, but Archie persists. His need to control even his own burial reveals the depth of his insecurity and, paradoxically, his love. He cannot express affection directly, so he disguises it as orders. The tragedy is that Edith understands him completely, but lets him believe she doesn't, because that is her way of loving him back. The interplay of comedy and mortality peaks when Archie, half delirious from pain, rants that he wants to be buried far from the noisy families who picnic in cemeteries. The monologue, absurd yet haunting, encapsulates the entire philosophy of the show Laughter as the defense against extinction. By the end of these episodes, death has become a running gag and survival itself a punchline, yet the audience feels oddly comforted. The laughter doesn't erase the pain, it transforms it into resilience. In the final episode of this arc, the house becomes crowded again, not with family, but with strangers, cameras, and the invisible pressure of history. Edith, dressed simply, sits beneath the studio lights, her face glowing with nervous humility. Archie lurks just off camera, grumbling about lady newscasters and muttering that men make the disasters, let men report them. His voice fades as the reporter turns to Edith and asks her to describe what happened when she saved a life. For a moment, everything slows. Edith, searching for words, looks not at the reporter but at the camera, at the audience, and says something small and miraculous that she didn't think she just acted. Because when someone needs help, that single line dissolves all the noise around her. It redeems Archie's chaos, silences the pretensions of television, and captures the spirit of the series. All in the Family was never truly about politics or social satire. It was about ordinary decency surviving inside the machinery of modern life. Edith's voice, hesitant, unfashionable but pure, becomes the conscience of an entire nation weary of shouting. As the credits roll, the old theme song returns, like a sigh from another era. Boy, the way Glenn Miller played, the nostalgic melody that once sounded cheerful now feels elegiac. Archie and Edith sing it together, slightly out of tune yet perfectly united. For all their arguments, their world is bound by love, imperfect, clumsy, but enduring. The laughter that once mocked them now becomes applause not for their ignorance, but for their humanity. Through these 5 episodes, the series achieves something rare. It transforms the domestic sitcom into social theater, where each punchline carries a history lesson and each silence a prayer. The supermarket becomes a battlefield of class struggle, the hospital a confessional for America's conscience, the dinner table a stage for moral farce, and the living room a national mirror. The genius lies in its refusal to preach. Instead, it lets its flawed characters stumble toward empathy, one awkward conversation at a time. By the end of this arc, Archie Bunker remains as he began stubborn, loud, and often wrong. But he has been cracked open, if only slightly by experience. He has seen another man's despair, another woman's courage, another kind of love that defies his categories. Edith remains his anchor, her goodness unshaken. Together, they embody the uneasy heart of America, bruised by change, redeemed by kindness. When the final laughter fades and the audience filters out, what lingers is not the jokes but the rhythm of survival, the sound of 2 aging voices, singing of days gone by, knowing they will never return, and yet singing anyway.